Guys, what's the guiltiest, most regrettable solo sessions you've ever had? I was on vacation in New Zealand with my mom and her lesbian girlfriend. Upon arrival, she realized that we had miscalculated the exchange rates, and we wouldn't be able to stay in hotels and would instead have to use hostels and really budget everything. This was fine, except I couldn't flap in a public hostel. About 2 weeks into the vacation, she realizes we are actually fine on the exchange rate, so she books us a reward stay at a Hilton with a nice pool and private rooms. But I still had to sleep in the same bedroom as my mom and this woman, and I was incredibly charged at the time. So, I'd go swimming and then head back to my room to see if they were gone. Nope. I started to wander throughout the hotel, and one room had the door key still in it. I slowly opened it, and it was empty. I took the key, immediately turned on any channel that had anything resembling chesticles and flapped. Such release. I kept the key, went back down, swam a while, went back up, flapped again. But before I could finish this second time, the door opened, and there were 2 hotel employees sternly looking at me. Long story short, I was marched down to the manager's office. They called my mom. We were kicked out of the hotel to avoid charges, and ended up staying in a hostel as the only available alternative. Bonus redemption. On the way back, flying the 12 hours flight, I had an entire row to myself on the plane, and I absolutely flapped numerous times under a blanket, more than making up for the trip. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. My family went on holiday, leaving the 18-year-old me the house all to myself for 2 weeks. After a solid week of nonstop house parties, I thought I'd enjoy some downtime. The night before was quite a big one, and nobody called, so I assumed I wouldn't have visitors. Also, I lived somewhat out the way, so I'd see car lights if someone drove up the driveway. Due to my cavalier attitude and mostly sheer laziness, I decided to forego closing the curtains. The family computer was in the kitchen with the monitor facing big windows, and unfortunately for me, you have to walk past the said window to get to the front door. I loaded up the finest of the LimeWire library that I had been accumulating that week and started doing my thing. Just as I was reaching the end, I was startled by an almighty thud on the window. I turned around to find 8 to 10 friends, bags of beer in hand, pointing, laughing and mockingly cheering me on. I was mercilessly ribbed for the rest of the evening, and 20 years later, I'm still on high alert during solo sessions. Curtains are closed and a creak on a floorboard will halt proceedings until investigated. I'd say I'm a flapping ninja, but just the other day, my wife told me that when she went to put something on Plex for my 2-year-old son, she was greeted by my corn library. Must remember to properly close the app. Thankfully, she finds it as funny as my friends did back then. But I guess I better find a way to avoid this in future, as my son's getting pretty good with the TV remote. Story 3. I underestimated how long it would take my mom to get from the garage to the house. Basically, I was home alone watching corn, and I was super close when I heard my mom's car pull up to the garage. Figured I had enough time between the roller door opening, her driving in, parking, getting out, then up the stairs and so forth. Figured it was enough to finish and clean up, and worst case, I would just be having a piss in the toilet. Anyway, I was wrong, and she was in the house just as the point of no return hit, and in a panic, I ended up tucking my dong under my clothing and spilling my smoothie in my jumper just as she walked into my room. Then we had an awkward 20-minute conversation about our days whilst I was sitting there with my smoothie sprayed on my chest like the dirty characters in the corn I'd been watching. My brother got busted even worse. He was home after school, blasting corn on his computer and giving it a full rip. Well, my dad came home early that afternoon and walked in on him right as he was letting his spider web loose with the volume cranked super high. They didn't talk for a week after that. Story 4. After university, I dated a girl for a short while who was an identical twin. I went to stay at her parents' place one weekend, and as they were fairly traditional, I had to stay in a spare room. I woke up early in the morning with a raging stiffy and decided to solo, as I clearly wasn't going to get any action that weekend given the sleeping arrangements. There was a photo on the bedside table of my girlfriend, her twin sister, equally hot, and their older sister, also a good-looking girl. So naturally I decided to use this as inspiration for my flap. The only problem was my dong wasn't the only thing to have risen early. My girlfriend walked in as I was doing my thing, eyes closed, holding a picture of her and her sisters close to my chest. We barely spoke for the rest of the weekend, especially after my excuse of, "I wanted to look at a picture of you," failed when I incorrectly identified her twin sister in the photo as my girlfriend under questioning. Not my finest hour. Story 5. My guiltiest one was when I was working the night shift at a condominium in Manhattan. I was alone at the security podium when I found that one of the other doormen had taped pictures of hot girls in the back of our building log notebook. With no one around, I started to flap, constantly checking the security cameras to see if anyone was walking down the halls. I started to do this almost every night. During the third time doing at the podium, though, a tenant suddenly walked in through a different entrance and began to approach me while I still had my dong in hand. I didn't have enough time to buckle up, so I pressed the front of my body tightly against the podium so she wouldn't see my dong. As I was talking to her, though, I kept fantasizing about her catching me with my dong out and inviting me up to her condo for some wild adventure. To say the least, this made for an uncomfortable wall press. Story 6. I have always remembered this one time for some reason. I guess it goes down in my books as being my favorite. I will give you the story. I was 24-25 and living in an apartment with a friend of my brother's. She was 26 at the time and very hot. We both lived in the same town, states away from our friends/family. We shared a lot of the same friends, so decided it was best to live together. I had a girlfriend at the time. There was nothing between us, and I never expected there to be. She kept the same schedule and would come home, go to the gym, make dinner, take a shower, and then go to sleep. I was at home in the living room, downstairs. It was a 2-story place, and I was watching a movie. She came home from the gym and sat down to watch some of the movie with me. The movie was very intimate when she came in, and I found it a little weird that she was watching it. She was on the couch and covered up with a blanket, which she normally did. Not really sure what was going on under the blanket, but after about 10 minutes, she said she was going to take a shower. It was weird because she was breaking her schedule. Then I put 2 and 2 together and realized she was acting a little funny during the movie. I figured she was charged by the movie and was jumping in the shower to finish up. As she went in, I immediately got a stiffy at the thought. She took off her clothes in her room and headed to the shower. I went to my room, grabbed my lotion, and immediately started doing it. I'm not sure why, but I went into her room with my dong out. I saw her gym clothes on the floor with her inners still intact. I knew she was in the shower, but had no idea when she was finishing. I grabbed those from the floor and just breathed. It was incredibly hot. It was all I could do to point my dong up at that minute to avoid dropping my smoothie on her floor. I quickly dropped everything, ran back to my room, and tried my best to clean myself up. She was in the shower for a really long time. I don't know why, but that has always stuck in my mind as being my best solo moment. I will think back at times and usually get stiffy just thinking about it. Story 7. In New York, I lived in a building that basically made a U shape, so if you looked out your window, you were directly facing someone else's window. Very hot girls lived in the apartment across from me, and sometimes they would do it with guys. If my roommate was gone at night, I would turn off all the lights and furiously do my thing to anything the girls were doing. I am not even ashamed of that part. It was just so frigging hot. Anyway, one night, I came home from work and thought my roommate was out. The girls were in their inners for some reason, and so it was time for me to do my solo work. I went into my roommate's dark room to get a better view out his window. While I was doing my thing, I said some pretty pervy crap under my breath. A little later on, I had moved on to other things and saw my roommate walk out to the kitchen to get a drink of water. Turns out he was asleep in his lofted bed when I thought he was gone, and he probably heard all the disgusting things I said and heard me furiously flapping directly under him. We never, ever spoke of it. Story 8. In BCT, we would take turns guarding the bathroom door, flapping furiously during fire guard. Each guy brought his own material, usually a Playboy centerfold clipped from the magazine, a few pictures of girlfriends/wives, all smuggled in through the mail. Eventually, we combined everyone's corn. One guy had a picture of some girl taped to the door of his locker that went missing around week 3 to 4. Naturally, it made it into the pile. It was a pretty popular snapshot. It must have been passed among 30 different guys before he came across it during his solo time, I assume. Anyways, we're all dead asleep one night when we hear him shout, "You jerks." He raced out of the bathroom in tears, waving the picture around, screaming. I'm not sure what he was saying, but he washed out the next morning. Apparently, the girl in the picture, his little sister, passed a few months before he shipped out, in a car accident. I didn't feel guilty while doing to the picture when I didn't know who it was, but looking back, I can't help but feel a little uneasy. Story 9. Guiltiest flap? Watching my ex make out with some dude in my house, and then seeing her give a blowy to him. It was so incredibly hot knowing that she had just been banged that I just did it right there. I will say that it caused me no end of emotional trouble after. I was sick back then. Damn was I sick. Further update from comments. She was my ex at the time, and I had just crushed her pie 3 to 4 hours before this happened. Went to a hookah bar, brought the guy back because he didn't have a car. We all seemed to be having a good time. I said I'd be back. I was going to get drinks for all of us, and forgot my wallet. So I came back from the car after I started it, and hello, they were making out. So I watched, and then she just dove onto this guy's dong like she was a starving Ethiopian child on a hot dog. I did it while watching, standing outside my living room window in the dark. They seemed to really be enjoying it, and it made my solo fantastic plus knowing I had banged her before, and she hadn't showered since. After, I walked in on them, and she had her mouth on his dong. I just told her and him to leave and get the F out of my house. Story 10. When I was 18, I watched a lot of Korn and often used a small plastic dipping sauce cup to hold my smoothie while I was at it. One weekend, my parents were out of town, and my younger brother and I were home alone. My laptop was acting up, so while he was busy in the living room playing Minecraft, I decided to go up to his room to watch Korn on his computer. As I was looking around for something to hold my smoothie, I spotted a small trash bin next to his bed. I found a paper dipping sauce cup in it, and thought it would be perfect for what I needed. After I was done with my thing, I left his room and went back downstairs to watch Adventure Time, and from upstairs, I heard my brother yell, "Oh my God." And as I was walking upstairs to see what was wrong, he yelled, "Is that Korn?" And I went into his room, and he was standing by his computer desk looking at me with pure shock, and the Korn site was still up on his computer, and I realized I pressed the wrong button to close it. I clicked on the button that shrinks it and takes it to the taskbar, and my brother also found the cup I came in, and he got shocked by what he found and dropped it. So the smoothie was now on the carpet, and some of it was on his feet. I had never been so mortified in my life. Story 11. After not flapping for over a month, accidentally walked in on my wife's hot, bare, wet, ballet dancing younger sister 3 days before the wedding with dong in hand and uncontrollably exploded all over her. Okay, me and my wife and her whole family are all pretty religious. When we decided to get married, we agreed that we wouldn't have intimate relations until then. So to make this special night more exciting, I stopped having my private sessions a few months before the wedding. Big mistake. A few days before, we were having a pool party at her house, which was also a huge mistake. We were both excited out of my mind in anticipation, and being in a bathing suit just made her all that much more hotter. We had started brushing into each other in the pool, but quickly realized that if we were going to uphold the agreement, we'd have to cool it. After having a stone rod for more than an hour, I knew what was needed to be done. So she kept watch for me while I slipped out of the pool for a quick run to the bathroom for my private sesh. I went to the upstairs bathroom nearly ready to burst, and as I moved down the hall toward the bathroom, I whipped it out to ease some of the pain. As I opened the door, I thought I heard her mom down the hall. I turned my head as I walked in, then turned back into the bathroom, dong in hand. There beside the toilet, swimsuit around her ankles, dripping wet, stood her smoking hot sister, who was a ballet dancer, fully bare, getting ready to use the bathroom. An instant combination of the shock of seeing someone, her body, that I had to fight off looking at all day, and the already building storm in my downtown area was too much. The surprise caused me to grip it quickly, and within 1/2 of a second, that crap was flying everywhere in the room. It was the hardest, longest, and most intense one I had up to that point in my life. Of course it aimed right at her, on the wall, the shower curtain, and God knows where else. The awkward explosion went on for like 20 seconds with her putting up a hand to block some of it from her face. Mortified, I slowly backed out, and she silently closed the door. I stood in the hall, and the pit of my stomach churned. I started to cry thinking that I had inadvertently just ruined my marriage. Knowing that she, sister, lived a pretty sheltered life, and that this was probably a first for her, I didn't know how badly I'd just messed her up. A moment later she came out of the bathroom, surprisingly calm, and before I had a chance to speak said, "Are you okay?" It surprised me, and I spilled out the whole truth in sobs of honesty. With an amazing amount of maturity, she looked at me and said, Can you honestly say that was totally accidental? Yes. She said, okay, I understand, and I know you two love each other greatly. It was just a mistake. I won't say anything. I thanked her for being so understanding and told her that her sister is the only one I ever want, and I love her, and this doesn't mess things up for her too bad. She just said, no, I understand, and it's okay. Just try not to get it in my hair next time. It all good now. Years later, we have tons of kids, and my wife is the only one who ever rocks my world. To my knowledge, nothing has even been said, and no one is the worst for it. Story 12. All right, here's the situation, 100% true, hence the throwaway. There's this girl I'm completely obsessed with. We're staying at a motel in Chicago, separate rooms, but I found an excuse to spend time with her. She's insanely attractive, and at some point, she agrees to let me give her a massage, and even return the favor. By the end of it, I'm ridiculously on, but she's not available to me in that way. She heads off to take a shower and comes out fully dressed, casually asking how I'm doing before going back into the bathroom to do her makeup. I admit to her that the massage left me seriously up and on. She shrugs and says, why don't you just take care of it? I respond, sure, but I'll wait until the bathroom is free. Standing outside the door, I hear her say, I don't mind. Go ahead. So, I go into the bathroom, while she's continuing to put on her makeup. So, I do my thing while she stands behind me, massaging my back. Oh, one more detail. She is 21 and I am 49. We still hang out. Story 13. Years ago, it was summertime, and my parents, both working, got me a babysitter for most weekdays. I was reluctant to meet her. I didn't want a babysitter. Imagine my happiness when she turned out to be this super hot, big-jugged, like 32DD blonde chick who always wore stuff that showed off her jugs. I was always checking her out, and she caught me a few times. She'd just smile shyly. And one day, she brought over these pictures of a trip she'd gone on, to Mexico or something. They were all of her and her pals, her in a tiny bikini in all of them. I took one of these pictures into the washroom while she was doing her homework and just had my time. About a minute, short of Mount St. Helens NG all over her picture, she opens the door to the bathroom. I guess she didn't know I was in there, and saw exactly what I was doing, and exactly what I was doing it to. She made a little embarrassed squeak and closed the door. I felt awkward and a bit guilty after that, but I fought through it. Story 14. It happened last summer. I was 21, back at home for a couple of days, and my parents were taking my sister for her summer camp. I didn't want to go with them because I had plans for the evening to go out with friends. Once they left, the clothes went off and the computer on. For a while I searched for some worthy video. Once I found it, the solo session began. A couple of minutes in, and my phone started ringing. It was my mom. I paused the video and picked up the call. She told me that they had just learned that my grandma had passed away. She'd been quite ill for some time, but it still was unexpected. I hung up, gave myself a couple of seconds to realize what had happened, but after I noticed the frozen Lexi Bell with a dong in her hands on my monitor, I thought, what the hell, and went on to finish my work. After I was done, I closed the video, put on some clothes and cried. Not sure if it was because of the guilt or because my grandma passed away. I just felt frigging terrible. Oh, and my sister went to the camp not knowing what had happened. She found out only after she came back home, a week after the funeral. She wasn't too happy either. Story 15. It's a bit messed up, but here I go. When I was 18, I was home alone one night and knew that my father had a corn stash. For the record, I'm a perfectly adjusted and very moral person these days, but I had a pretty messed up childhood. Anyways, I went looking for said corn stash and got lucky. When I went to put one of the videos, I found a homemade video of him and my stepmother, who I suppose was kind of attractive in her younger days, but I had never looked at her that way. It only had one angle, and you really couldn't see that much, but I somehow became charged and did what I set out to do. The moment I was done, I felt instant shame and guilt about what I had done and returned the video to where I found it. I ended up doing this around another 2 or 3 times, each time feeling more horrible about what I had done than the time before. The last time I did it, they got home mid-flap, so I turned the video off and hid it under my bed. I went to return the video the next opportunity one had, but when I looked under my bed it was gone. My father or stepmother never said a word about it to me. Nothing has ever made me feel so guilty and ashamed of myself. It's probably the one thing in my life I'll never tell anybody. Story 16. I found something hot on a sketchy corn site. I gave my computer a nasty virus, a bad one. So bad, in fact, that I just shut it down and walked away, feeling completely defeated. I tried to boot it up in safe mode, but that didn't work. Then, my dad knocked on my door and asked why I was still up at 2 a.m., which is unusual for me. I told him I had been messing around online and accidentally clicked on something sketchy. He came in to help me get rid of the virus, but just before we fixed it, I realized the volume was still on. As soon as we regained control, the sound of a long, drawn-out moan from a very inappropriate video blasted through the speakers. My dad immediately hit the mute button, looked at me, and said, "Well, I guess we just won't talk about this." Story 17. I set up an audio recording device in my living room when I was certain my now ex was cheating on me and wouldn't admit it. So, one day I come home from work and check it, and sure enough I hear her let in her boss, and they get to screwing around. And it was everything I've ever wanted in our relationship that she always said she wasn't into. Turns out she just wasn't into me, and she was more into old married men. So yeah, I flapped a few times to that before, and after we broke up before eventually getting over her and deleting it. Story 18. I subscribed to a former coworker's OnlyFans for a bit. She didn't have too many followers, so she did customs. I asked for my biggest fantasy, and she produced. I don't regret that part. Genuinely one of the best videos I've ever seen. The massive regret wasn't for another 2 weeks. I have a main Gmail account and a throwaway. I signed up for OV with the wrong one. She basically accepted and filmed my request on autopilot, then hit a lull and looked through her messages and saw my name on it. So, she messaged me on Facebook, and I didn't see a point in lying since I'd been caught. She was pretty mad. All I could do to defend myself was say that she promoted it on her Facebook, so I thought it was okay for anyone to follow her. After a fair amount of communication, we were okay, but I felt appropriately horrible for not making sure it was okay first. Story 19. Stole pictures of wife's best friend and saved for myself. My wife has this best friend, M, she grew up with and were roommates together in college. M has always been very attractive and open since I have known her since high school. She didn't sleep around by any means, but was up for most anything with the 2 or 3 boyfriends she had. As best friends go, stories of each other's wild escapades were shared, and in turn shared with their respective significant others. Just hearing of the things she did with her boyfriends made me all that much more attracted to her. While my wife and her roomed in college, I had a handful of first-hand encounters of her other side. While I never witnessed M in all her gloriousness, she would occasionally talk to my then-girlfriend with a towel merely held in front of her, exposing the sides of her hips and thighs. M would ask to see the lingerie I had bought, and would get all giddy when she saw it. Her boyfriend, eventual husband, often stayed over. On nights I knew what was going down, I would excuse myself to the bathroom, which shared a common wall with her bedroom, often claiming intestinal distress to ward off suspicion of my girlfriend. With my ear to the wall, I would hear her, obviously while taking care of myself. The unfortunate occurrence of graduation brought that all to a stop. However, a year or so later after college, my wife and I went to visit M while she was attending graduate school out of state. M's husband was out of town for the weekend, which left just us 3 in their home. M prepared their bedroom for my wife and I to sleep in while she took the couch in the living room. I had intended to take a nap while the 2 went out shopping for the next couple hours. However, as I laid in the bed, I couldn't help but notice that something behind a picture frame up on the dresser. Out of curiosity, I investigated and found a digital camera with M's picture in her inners in a Scooby-Doo position. Friggin' jackpot. As I continued to browse the pictures, I would finally see those glorious D-cups and note that she did indeed enjoy pink toys and the reverse sitting. All these years of lust built up to this moment. I continued to do what any red-blooded American would do and flapped no less than 4 times over the next hour, thinking I will never have this opportunity again. Or would I? With some quick thinking, I recovered the camera cord and used their computer to transfer and email myself the photos. I enjoyed them weekly if not daily over the next few years. Guilt finally got hold of me, and I eventually destroyed all the evidence. Forward a few years later, and they are living in the same city my wife and I live. On occasion, M would tell my wife of the camera in question, claiming they could not figure out how to delete the pictures and that it was locked away in their safe. M and her husband took a vacation, so I was tasked with tending to their pets. Temptation got the best of me, and I went hunting for this safe. I did find it, and I did find that it was unlocked. I pulled the camera out to view them once again, but the batteries had long ago died. I took the memory card home that evening and once again copied the images and returned it to its proper place the next day. I still have and enjoy the photos to this day, albeit on a less frequent basis. As many times as I did my thing listening to her or fantasizing, they don't measure up to the guilt of taking and viewing those pictures. Story 20. Did you have clay as a kid? I did. I made mine into a lady garden and banged it. It was summer, so my parents were off at work, and I had the place to myself. So of course, as a rookie, I was bare in the bathroom with a Vaselined-up clay tube. That's when I heard somebody opening the front door at a time of day when nobody should have been opening the front door. With cat-like reflexes, I withdrew and Carl Lewis'd back to my room, put my gym shorts and t-shirt back on, tucked the stiffy behind the waistband, laid on the bed under the covers, and pretended I had been watching TV. Turns out it was my dad and his important boss in their suits and ties. They were heading back to the office after returning from a trip outside of the city, and were just stopping off at our place to use the bathroom. The bathroom where my crude gray-green clay and an open tub of Vaseline were sitting on the sink counter by the toilet. When he came out of the bathroom, my dad had me introduce myself. I shook his hand with my unmistakably Vaseline-y hand, just to go ahead and close the circle on what he was already thinking. Oh, the shame. The guilt. Sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. Story 21. Not even really ashamed, considering how later in life I decided the purpose of the establishment I was in didn't really suit my specific needs. But here we go. I used to be Mormon. One of the annoying things about being in junior high and high school is the seminary, aka waking up all in the morning to go to church before school. It was the biggest waste of time ever, but gave me a chance to ignore frigging everything the sheep were preaching that day and do homework. Well, the thing about seminary was that only like 4 of the 30-plus rooms were really utilized. So one time I got wise to the fact that I could go to the bathroom and go kick back in one of these rooms and just listen to music or play my DS, which kicked total, since the church had poorly encrypted Wi-Fi, so Mario Kart DS over Wi-Fi connection was a perfect way to kill time. Well, the room I chose had a collapsible divider in it that could be moved out from either wall and divide the room into 2 smaller ones. And the previous Sunday school class, this was on a Monday, had left the divider in place, albeit with a half-foot wide gap. Before I continue, I need to mention this. I was a senior in high school at the time, almost 18, never seen a girl bare without aid of a computer, and never even kissed a girl yet. I wasn't unattractive, far from it actually. Now, 5 years later, as I reread what I just wrote, I weep quietly. And girls definitely liked me, but I was too busy being uber geek to notice or, in some cases, care. This was when I was coming out of the nerd closet in a big way, shedding my Breaking Benjamin for my MC frontalot. Nerd ho! There was this amazing girl I knew who was a junior, and whose seminary class was upstairs in the room where the Webelos scouts met. She was absolutely beautiful, but not in an unhinged way like a lot of high school girls tend to be. She wore modest clothes, so no skin revealing, no short skirts or juicy pants. But this day, she was wearing a sun dress with a denim jacket, similar to Ares' getup from Final Fantasy VII, but in different color. When I checked my super secret slackin' spot, for S, as I recall mentally referring to it as, for intruders before I kicked back and got my red turtle shell on, I saw my crush in the other half of the room, sitting in a chair with her back to the other door, and with her feet propped up on another chair. She had her skirt, which was well past knee length, up to her hips almost, and she was having a solo moment. In a friggin' church. And I was creeping on the other side of the divider, watching her, hardly able to see details as the late autumn sun was just starting to make an appearance and come through the frosted windows into her side of the room. But I stood there, watching her, completely oblivious to my presence there. I have never had such a remarkable explosion as I stood there, hand covering my mouth, trying not to have an asthma attack as I did my thing, straining not to make any noise as to avoid detection and try to hear her soft, shallow, barely audible moans. To this day, she doesn't know. Since then, I have renounced religion, but unfortunately, she is a good girl, actually going to graduate from BYU Idaho this coming month with a degree in teaching. Otherwise, I would marry this beautiful, adventurous rebel in a heartbeat. Story 22. I flapped. My wife found evidence and thought I was cheating on her. A few years ago, I read somewhere on the net about some ways to enhance solo sessions. One intriguing thing I saw involved ice cream. You were supposed to put some ice cream in a rubber, and then you do it with the ice cream surrounding your dong in the rubber. When you are done, it was supposed to feel amazing. Your smoothie is supposed to feel extremely hot because your flesh is cold from the ice cream. I decided that I need to try this ice cream technique. I pick a day when my wife is running errands and I'm alone at the house. All we have in the freezer is butter pecans, so I scoop some out and pick out the nuts. I put a little bit in the rubber and stuff my dong in. It was frigging cold as hell, and I can barely feel any sensation. I imagine there is no sensation because of 3 things. 1, the cold has a numbing effect. 2, I'm wearing a rubber. And 3, there is a thin layer of ice cream in between. Time passed, and the ice cream was all but melted, and I still hadn't finished my thing. After I was done, it was just a big sticky mess and a lot of cleanups. I didn't even get to feel the desired sensation because I outlasted the ice cream. But the story doesn't end there. Fast forward to around 1 a.m. that night. I was sleeping in bed, and I was awakened by an extremely irate wife. She informed me that she was doing laundry and found an empty rubber wrapper in my shirt pocket. I forgot to ditch the packet I used earlier. We weren't using any birth control ourselves during this period, so it looked really bad for me. I was still halfway asleep and speechless because I didn't know where to begin an explanation. So, I told her the truth. I told her I was doing my solo sessions. She asked why in the hell I wore protection. I told her that it eases cleanup. She was not buying it. I realized that I was in a deep hole and decided to suck up my pride and tell her the ice cream story. She said I was full of crap. If you look at my explanation from her point of view, I understand why. She finds an empty package in her husband's work shirt, and he claims he was soloing off with some ice cream. Finally, left with no other choice, I made the walk of shame downstairs to the trash can. I knew that I stuffed the rubber in an empty Sprite can when I was cleaning up. So, I begin to pull empty Sprite cans out of the garbage and shake them. Finally, I shake one and hear something inside. I open up the can and pull out the sticky, warm, runny mess and shamefully make eye contact with my wife. She said, "You sick jerk," and returned to doing laundry. It has never come up again until this recollection. Story 23. Once at a hotel when I was around 12, I discovered the joys of the water jets in the hot tub. I desperately wanted to stick my dong in one, but my parents were there along with about 6 other people. It was one of those elongated hot tubs that was built in. I kept trying to surreptitiously put my dong in the jet, but I kept getting scared of people finding out. So eventually I tried to casually saunter up to the side of the tub and stealthily move my hand to pull my swimsuit. Finally, my dad straight up tells me that everyone knows what you are doing. So, after that I just sat there embarrassed, not moving at all until we got out. Story 24. I came of age in a 1-bedroom house. In this 1 bedroom slept 4 people: my mother, father, sister, and me. If I don't count the numerous times I did my thing in the bunk bed below my younger sister as my guiltiest, you should be able to tell how growing up in such close quarters has stinted my intimate life. I don't make much noise in bed. With 4 people sharing a bedroom came the inevitable reality of 4 people sharing a bathroom. In this bathroom stood a closet so packed with the remnants of my parents' past toiletries that I could, and often did, pull out a fresh sample-sized bottle of lotion nearly every night. One evening, after casually swiping a bottle of moisturizer with the practiced stealth that comes from living in a house where you can hear someone fart across the hall, I retreated to my bunk at the foot of my parents' bed and got to work. I was about to flawless victory my dong when things went all super weak. Let me just say, there's a feeling you get when you can feel your dong in your hand, but you can't feel your hand on your dong, and that feeling is intense fear. Everything from tip to bottom was completely numb, but still stood strong. In an instant I saw the intimate life that I hadn't even started disappear. When so much is on the line, you swallow your 14-year-old pride and act. You force the words, "Mom, I can't feel my dong out." Then, as the gravity of the words you just choked out forces the blood back into your head, you make up a quick lie about putting some lotion on your thighs because you were chaffing. Then as your mother explains what lidocaine is and why they would even put that crap in lotion, you can go back to your bunk and try to relax as your dad's laughter and remarks of, "He has to be gay now," softly lull you to sleep. No, you don't. You wait till that crap wears off and you finish stronger than ever. Story 25. After a party, I went with a girl back to her hotel room where a lot of other people were crashing. We started to hook up on the floor, but it was too uncomfortable and there were too many people in there for us to get it on properly. So I whisper, "You want me to get us our own room?" And she was like, "Yeah." So I went out and strutted up to the front desk, all haters gonna hate, and got us a room like a frigging boss. $100 on the card, which was a lot for a broke student. But I didn't care, I was getting laid. So I go back and collect her, and off we go to our private love nest. We hop in bed and get straight to business. I got to work, and I started to try to go downtown, and she gave me the Heisman, and she says she's on her period. And I'm like silently, dang it. Drunk and not to be deterred, I move back upstairs to, warm her up a bit so she'll change her mind and let me hit it anyway. I swear to God I spent an hour on that to no avail. And she wouldn't do anything for me either. What the F? I was pissed. Finally, I was like, "Well, why did you have me get this room?" And she said she just didn't want to sleep on the floor. This bish. So, I finally gave up, and we rolled over on our sides to go to sleep. But I wasn't finished. I laid there not moving and breathing evenly. I waited until her breathing changed, and then waited some more to be sure. And then I started working one out ever so gently. Non-dominant hand, mind you. And then I sprayed it on her bare back, and went to sleep. So haha missy. Leading me on like that. What a skeevy thing for me to do, but I never actually felt guilty about it. $100. Story 26. For 3 years my aunt, uncle, and their daughter were living in a neighboring state where we would visit them for a week annually. I'm 6 months older than my cousin, and when we were both between the ages of 17 to 19, we would flirt sort of satirically, at first. We were both raised in very loving, but very Mormon households, and were both going through a slightly rebellious stage. Every once in a while, after figuring out that we were both rebels, she would invite me up to her room and sort of force the issue of who I was dating and wanted to know details of everything, physical relations involved, and then would proceed to tell me about hers. All this while she would sit on my lap, while just in a towel or PJs. She'd usually want me to give her a back rub, and I almost always had a stiffy, and I'm pretty sure she felt it. We come from a family of attractive people, so the fooling around would have been hot. We never did, but I used to flap to the thought all the time. I used to, but I also still do. We're both 25 now, and she's married, and just had a kid. Ironically, perhaps, I used to feel super guilty about this, but now I couldn't care less. Story 27. One of my friends was out of state visiting family, and I'm also friends with his girlfriend. One night, the two of us went to a bar with my best friend. We're all mutual friends, and we all ended up pretty drunk. Afterward, we crashed at my best friend's place, where he immediately stumbled off to his room and passed out. His girlfriend and I ended up sharing the pull-out sofa. At some point, she slipped off her pants under the sheets and knocked out. I woke up sometime in the middle of the night and realized there's a hot girl half bare next to me. The only problem was she was my friend's girlfriend. That problem didn't overpower my thirst. So, I started doing it. I started slowly exploring while she was asleep, and she didn't even flinch. I kept pushing the ante, and eventually ended up pulling her thong to the side and fingering her. Then I took her hand and started to use it in a proper way. By this time, I kept wondering if she was really asleep or just letting me do it. Right when I ended, I pulled her hand away and just passed out. When we both woke up, I don't think she had any idea what happened because she was her normal self. We still talk a lot, and I can't help but feel really guilty and really excited every time I think about that night. Story 28. I once cooked up a pot of macaroni noodles. I buttered them up and stuffed them into my plastic Hulk Hogan mug. I covered the top with a few layers of saran wrap and secured it with some rubber bands. I then took this mug to my room, tore open a hole, and banged the warm buttery noodles until I was done, all while listening to Metallica and watching Korn on silent. A fraction of a second after the deed, a horrible feeling of disgust, shame, and guilt washed over me. I promptly stuffed the spilled macaroni back into the mug, tried the best I could to scrub the butter stains off my sheets, and put the mug in my desk drawer and was determined to just forget about the whole filthy act. A few hours later, I opened up my desk drawer, took 3 Tylenol T3S, saw the mug, and went back for seconds. Story 29. My mom always said goodnight when I went to sleep when I still lived with my parents. My parents' room was across the hall from mine. She says goodnight. I lie down for 10 minutes. And then it's go time. I start up the computer, head to some crappy 10-second clip website, before I knew about the better stuff. Plus, we still had dial-up. For those young ones unfamiliar with dial-up internet, it was slow. Look it up, and get after it. I'm hard at work, no pun intended. Suddenly, I hear the noise of the creaky floorboards in the hallway. Crap. No time to react. I minimize the browser window as the door opens. My mom says, "What are you doing up?" I have no response to this, so I sit staring at my computer. She says, "Turn around." So, my shirt tucked low, I turn to look at her with my best poker face. She says, "Go to sleep," and closes the door. I was like, hell yeah. She didn't even notice. She knew. Of course she knew. Story 30. I was dating this girl who had a sister who would throw pool parties every weekend in the summer. I would always make sure to generally take way too long with whatever I was doing before we left so I could arrive late, and I never changed beforehand, just brought my bathing suit and dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. We would arrive mid-party every time, and I would need to go change, which afforded me an opportunity to head into the house and just frigging raid her sister's dirty laundry. With the house completely empty, I always figured I had about 20 minutes because in that time frame, I could plausibly be taking a dump. I also generally had a selection, besides my girlfriend's sister. The sister had 2 older friends, and one of them would bring over her 18-year-old daughter. So, yeah, I would huff all of the inners available in that guest room by the fistful to see which odor I preferred that day, then wear them over nose and just do my thing. Story 31. Back in the days, a very hot female friend of mine was going to New York with her mother to visit family. I was asked to feed the cat and dog while they were away. I stole a pair of inners and rubbed my dong. The worst, though, was the day before they came back. I knew this would be the last time I'd ever have the chance to play with all her inners. Usually I would walk down, but that day was particularly cold. Mother insisted that she drive me, and she had to go to the grocery store anyway. All right, fine. I can be done in like 10 seconds if I have to. Before I leave, a pretty wicked headache comes on. Whatever, I've dealt before. Mom drops me off, goes to the store. I go upstairs, head pounding, grab a pair of her inners, and proceed to do my thing. Standing in the bathroom, I get a sharp, shooting pain in the side of my head. I fall into the flimsy metal closet behind me, denting it a little. I fall from there onto the floor, my smoothie all over the little carpet in front of the sink, and knock all the shampoo bottles off the side of the tub. I lay there for a while, trying to compose myself, working through the pain. I try to clean up and fix what I can. The door isn't too bad. Maybe she won't notice. I got the smoothie out of the carpet, rearranged the shampoos fairly believably. We're good. I folded her clothes and inners and put them back in the drawer. I walk downstairs and I see a shadow. Hello. Just me. Mom. Oh God. Poker face everywhere. I forgot the store closes at 10. Oh, well, I'm done here. We can go. Okay. Poker face on the way to the car. As we're pulling out, there's the girl and her mom pulling into our spot. Story 32. Soloed off to a guy flapping because I was expecting a woman to come on screen soon. She never came. Back in the day of downloading corn off LimeWire, you really never got what you expected. I remember one video of a dude soloing off on the couch. The camera placement was so far back, and you could see so much of the living room that it kinda made sense to my young mind that his partner was going to come into frame. It just never happened. Story 33. So story time, I haven't thought about this in years, and I have never shared it with anyone. This seems like an appropriate time as any. So, I was 18 and like most American boys, I was thirsty all the time. I usually got home from school and had a few hours before anyone else made it home for the afternoon. I used to walk home with a small group from our neighborhood. One of the members of our walking gang lived a few streets over and was an absolute cutie. We would always flirt with each other, but I hadn't really attempted a move. One day I used the afternoon walk home, an empty house, to try and get lucky. I invited her over, and she accepted. We were hanging out in my room, and things were progressing nicely. After what felt like an eternity, she had reached into and pulled my dong out. I could have burst at any moment. It was quite the double-edged sword. She lowered her mouth next to the dong and just gently touched her lips to it and let out this huge blow of hot air. To this day, it is still one of my favorite memories. She asked me if I had protection. Of course, because I'm 18 and don't fully form a plan, I didn't have one. She told me that's too bad, and she said, "Don't worry, I'll be free on Friday. I'll swipe one from my brother, and we will finish this." She then took her inners and tied it like a bow on my dong. Shortly after she left, I furiously flap it like it owes me money. That night, I'm messaging her on ICQ, and I just can't stop thinking about it. Eventually, I log off, and by then it's late, probably around 11 or 11:30. I assume everyone in the house is asleep. I reached over and grabbed the inners. I was so deep into it and just doing my thing when suddenly the door opens and my mom entered. The lights in my room were off, so I froze. The hallway light was on, casting a faint glow into the room. My mom didn't have her glasses on, and I could see her squinting, trying to figure out if I was awake. Then suddenly the door closed. My heart was racing. I felt a wave of shame wash over me. But I pushed those feelings aside and continued on, like any soldier would. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.